Well, good morning, church. Well, maybe I should just say the benediction and stop while I'm ahead. If you don't know it, my name is Duane. I really am one of the pastors here. I've been gone for 8 weeks on a renewal leave, and for the second time in 32 years of ministry, I had a renewal leave, and thank you. Thank you for the privilege of finding new ways to go and listen to God. Thank you for the staff and lay leadership of the church that continued on. I mean, while I was gone, you framed a house. While I was gone, you sent the youth to Tijuana Christian Mission in Mexico. While I was gone, you sent Epworth Choir to Alaska. While you were the voice for women while I was gone. And thank you for being the church, even without me present. Thank you. It makes my heart happy. And if it's your first time here, if you just happen to stumble in and you're wondering, like, who's that guy? Welcome. My name is Duane. I'd love to be your pastor if you don't have a pastor. And if you don't have a church home, we would be honored to become your church home and to partner with you in this journey of Christianity. So I want to take you to a text today that's familiar words in the Gospel of Luke. So just kind of hear these words from chapter 24. Luke writes, "It was very early in the morning, the first day of the week, when the woman took spices and they went to Jesus' tomb. They found the stone rolled away, but they did not see his body. They met angels, messengers, who asked this question, 'Why do you look for the living among the dead?' They replied, 'He is not here. He has risen.' He is risen indeed. The women returned and told the 11 and the others. But just like today, they did not believe the women because their words seemed like nonsense. Simon Peter, one of the disciples, ran to the tomb. He saw the strips of linen lying there. He went away wondering, what happened in this place?" And here are the texts from Luke 24, verse 13. Luke continues the story. "Now, that same day, Easter morning, that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. As they walked together, Jesus himself, the risen Christ, came and walked with them." But Luke writes this wonderful phrase, "Their eyes were kept from recognizing him." And as they walked along, they were talking about all the events that had taken place in Jerusalem, how Jesus, the Messiah, was mighty in his words and deed, and they're just going on. And Jesus asked them, "What are you talking about?" And they said, they stopped. The scripture says their faces were sad or fell. And they asked, "Are you the only one? I mean, are you the only one in Jerusalem who doesn't know what's taken place?" And Jesus said, "What took place?" There was this prophet. He was mighty in his words. He was mighty in the things that he did. His name was Jesus. He was from Nazareth. We thought he would save us. But it's been 3 days. 3 days since a chief priest handed him over to be crucified. Now, this morning, some women from our group went to the tomb to take care of his body, and they came back saying he was not there. They had met angels, they said, messengers from God that said he had risen. So we sent some guys to the tomb to check it out, and they came back saying the tomb was empty, but they did not see him. Jesus replied to the two, "Oh, how slow you are to understand the ways of God." And beginning with all the prophets in the scriptures, he explained everything in the text that spoke of him. And before they knew it, they had walked 7 miles from Jerusalem to Emmaus. And Jesus acted like he was going further. And they said to him, can you stay? Could you come in? I mean, the day's almost over. Could you stay with us tonight? And Jesus entered their home and joined them at the table, where he took bread. He blessed it. He broke it. And he gave it to them. And their eyes were opened and they recognized him. And Luke writes, Jesus disappeared. Wow. And they looked at each other as if to say, that happened, right? And they said, didn't your heart burn within you when he spoke the words of life? And immediately they got up from the table and they ran back to Jerusalem, the 7 miles. They found the 11. They said, the women were right. Jesus is risen. Wow. Where is it that on your journey you've met the risen Christ? Well, for the last 5 weeks, I had the privilege to walk the Camino de Santiago. I just returned from this 500-mile journey starting in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port in France, and then making my way to Santiago de Compostela in Spain. It's a pilgrimage journey. It's one of the 3 main pilgrimages that Christians take even today. People still go to Rome as a pilgrimage. People still go to the Holy Land as a pilgrimage. And Christians for 1,000 years have walked the way of St. James in Spain. If you do a little history, if you Google it, you'll find out people you've heard of. St. Francis of Assisi has walked the way of St. James. If you look at your American history, you'll find out that John Adams walked the way of St. James. He did it in reverse. He was headed to France during the Revolutionary War to raise some money, and his ship began to sink. So he got off in Spain, and he walked the way of St. James. And he writes in his memoir, my greatest regret in walking the way of St. James is that I did not stop in the Cathedral in Santiago. A pilgrimage is a devotional practice. It's part of our life. It's often a prolonged journey taken underfoot or occasionally on horseback, but essentially you're going to a destination. For followers of Jesus, we've often been on pilgrimage. It's kind of a transcendent experience. It removes you from your environment, from your norm, from your routine, from your home, from your identity. Your motivation for a pilgrimage may be very, very different. I mean, I met people that were walking the Camino because they quit this job and they're getting ready to take another one and they had some time. I met some people walking the Camino because they had a major loss in their life. Maybe the death of a child, the death of a parent or spouse. And this was a memorial trip for them. I met other people who were walking just to listen. I'm here to listen. I'm here to see if God speaks. I met other people walking because it just sounded cool. 500-mile walk sounds cool. Let's do it. I met other people who were just looking for God. We all take our pilgrimages for different reasons, all ages. I met 85-year-olds, and I saw a baby in arms on the pilgrimage. I met one young lady as we walked. I said, what's your biggest surprise of the pilgrimage? She said, I'm surprised how old people are that are walking like you. God be with her soul. Pilgrimage is a devotional practice that is body, mind, and spirit. It often blends these things into a unified experience and sometimes can lead to transformation. The word pilgrim, it comes from a Latin word, peregrinus. On the Camino, people will call you in Spanish a peregrino, a pilgrim. And wherever you go, there are pilgrim meals. In other words, if you're walking the path, we got a meal for you. 3 courses, wine. Why? Because we know you need some food. We got a pilgrim cost for you if you're staying in the hostel. It's cheaper than anyone else staying. Why? Because you're on a pilgrimage. There's a Pilgrim Mass that takes place for all those, whether you're Catholic or not. Spain's predominantly Catholic. But at the end of the Mass, the priest often will say, will all the pilgrims come forward? And they'll bless all of the pilgrims. You have, if I find it here, you have a credential as a pilgrim that you take, and wherever you go, you acquire a stamp that says, I'm moving along on the journey, whether it's the place you stay or the place you eat or where you got a beer or the church you visited, there's a stamp and it says, I'm moving on the journey. And at the end of the pilgrimage, you can go to the pilgrim office and turn your form in, and they will either say you have completed the journey and here's your certificate, or you didn't complete the journey. Why be a pilgrim? What if Christianity is not so much about figuring out what to believe or doctrines to defend? But what if Christianity is a way of living, a way of loving? What if Christianity is a way of Jesus, a way of discovery of the love and grace and mercy and forgiveness of Jesus? Are we not all on the way? Are we not all pilgrims? Gene Peterson puts it like this in his book called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. He says, here's one of the challenges of our lifetime. He says, religion in our time has been captured by the tourist mindset, not pilgrimage. Religion is understood as a visit to an attractive site to be made when we have adequate leisure. For some, it's a weekly jaunt to church. For others, occasional visit to special services. Some, with a bent for religious entertainment and sacred diversion, plan their lives around special events like retreats or rallies or conferences. We go to see a new personality, to hear a new truth, to get a new experience, and so somehow expand our otherwise humdrum lives. He ends this chapter saying the Christian life cannot mature under such conditions. Wow. How is your pilgrimage going? Trevor Hudson writes a book called A Mile in My Shoes, and he talks about Christian pilgrimage. He's a South African Methodist pastor, and he said, look, there's 3 things we got to do to be on this pilgrimage. He says, we have to keep learning to be present. We have to keep learning to listen, and we have to keep learning to notice. That's all in that Emmaus story. Learning to be present. In the Emmaus story, Luke said their eyes were kept from recognizing him. What keeps you from seeing Jesus? What keeps you from seeing the presence of God? Their eyes were kept. Why didn't they notice? It's the risen Christ with them. How did they not know? Maybe it was because they lived in a violent world and all they could see was the violence. Maybe it was their preoccupation with a theology of military liberation. Maybe that's what kept their eyes from seeing Jesus. What keeps you from seeing Christ? One of the things that happens on the Camino is you have to find your pace. If you've been in a 5K race or a half marathon, full marathon, you recognize you got to find your pace. If you run somebody else's pace, it doesn't work. You have to run your pace. Same in the Camino. You have to walk your pace. And the first day for me on the Camino from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port is this beautiful European town right at a river and a valley. It's picturesque. And then you start up the Pyrenees, and immediately you start up the Pyrenees. And within about 15 minutes, I thought, oh, holy crap. What have I done? What am I going to do for 5 weeks? Because I can't do this. I mean, I'm carrying a backpack for the first time that isn't quite fit to my body yet. Imagine this. I had not read the details. Shocking. I know. Yeah, shocking. I didn't eat well, didn't sleep well the night before. I was anxious. To be honest, I was just trying to hold it together. I didn't know what I didn't know. It was beautiful, though. It was beautiful as we kept walking up. And you have no sense yet of how far is far. You got to find your pace. And eventually what you find out in day 3 or 4 is you've found the people who walk your pace. Because you keep seeing the same 30 to 50 people. And eventually you start recognizing each other, right? And again, one of his goals, he said, for us to walk this walk, to be a pilgrim, is to learn to be present. So I'd say about week 3, I met a guy named Mark, and Mark was a funny guy from Belgium. He always had something to tell you, and we often had dinner together. We're in the same albergue, the same place to stay at night, and we kind of kept the same pace. And on the last day, I think there's a picture of him. He's at the end of the table. Mark is at the end of the table. We're celebrating. That we've done this amazing thing, and we're celebrating. And I posted that picture, and another friend that was on the walk went, let me show you another picture. Go to the next one of a dinner, I think. That's Mark beside me on day 1. I wasn't fully present. If you said, when did you meet Mark? I would have said about the 3rd week. He sat beside me. I remember now he introduced himself and he spoke French and German and English and Spanish. And I remember thinking, oh no. I like barely speak English. It's like, I'm like, is that what I'm supposed to be like? I'm thinking, oh, Duolingo. But I was barely present. Sometimes that's the way life is. Sometimes we're barely present. About day 3, people started, walking near me, and they'd say, morning, Duane. And I would think, I don't know anybody's name. And at first, if I'm honest, I thought, I don't want to know anybody's name. One of the reasons I'm here is I want to get away from people. Right? I need a little break. And then I kind of heard that whisper of God say, but they're pilgrims with you. They may be a gift to you. You may be a gift to them. All right. So I began to, Irene. Okay, I wrote that down in my book so I could remember right the next day. And I could say, hey, Irene, instead of, hey, Georgia, which is what I was doing. Hey, California. Hey, Mexico. So I got a little better. I was learning to be present. You may feel sometimes like when you walk alone, but the truth is you're never alone on the Camino. There's always someone nearby. He says we must learn to listen. It's hard to listen in this noisy world that we're part of. We put our headphones on constantly. We put our earbuds in. We play the TV as we go to sleep. It's hard to listen. And so one of the gifts of the Camino for me was being unplugged from things. So the first hour, maybe the first 2 or 3 hours, especially the first 2 or 3 weeks, was normally very quiet. And there were birds singing and cows with bells around their neck doing cow stuff. And there were dogs barking and roosters crowing and creation shouting the praises of God. And I thought, I normally start with the news. And I don't think it makes me a better person. I'm a news junkie. I still read a paper. Some of you didn't know they printed paper. I still read a paper. And so for 5 weeks, there was very little news. You know what? The world's still here. I'm not saying ignore the world. I'm saying, what if you made space for creation to be the first thing that spoke to you every day? Whether it's while you're walking the dog or, just walking around the block. What if you let creation speak? I was amazed at how loud creation was in its praise of God. As I walked, I could start to hear echoes of text like Psalm 100 that speaks to us and says, "Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth." And I looked around and thought, it happens every day. And then I thought, I should know the rest of that text. So I had a Bible with me. And I pulled it out and I thought, I'm going to learn this text as I walk. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come into God's presence with singing. Know that the Lord is God. It is she who made us. We are hers. We are her people, the sheep of her pasture. So enter God's gates with thanksgiving and enter God's courts with praise. Know that the Lord is God. The steadfast love of the Lord endures forever. God's faithful to all generations. And I thought, I need that kind of input in my life so that I can join creation as it speaks praise. So we seek to learn to listen. Later, about day 9, I was in a town called Grenon. It was a hard day. It was a hot day. And I just made it into town, and I was pushing a little bit because I wanted to take a break in a couple days. So I was kind of doing a day and a half in a day. And I got into town, and there are different types of places you can stay. You can stay in municipal places, devotional places like run by churches. You can stay in for-profit places. And this place only had a couple because it's a small town, and it was run by a church. And I thought, I'll stay there for the first time in a devotional place. And I get there, and I say, I need a bed. And they say, we're full. And I thought, I know the next place is like 2 hours away. And they must have seen it on my face. And he went, wait a minute, we'll make space. I must have looked great. And they went and got another mat, and they moved some mats, and we were just mats on the floor, and they made space, and there was dinner that night, and we gathered for devotion, and it was a beautiful evening, very hot evening. And then we went out into the city or the town square. Most towns have a little square, and we're at a bar and having a great cold beer. And I happened to notice across the town square a German woman, that's all I got, that I'd spoken to earlier in the day who was really struggling with the heat. We were all struggling. And she'd gotten in town after we'd had dinner, and she was just sitting across the square. And I felt that nudge. I don't know if you ever feel this nudge of God, like, go check on her. And I didn't. I just didn't. I was noticing, but I was not fully there yet. Luckily, another couple was sitting across at another table. I had just met them at dinner, Germans again. And I saw him get up and walk over. And I listened. And he said, where are you staying? And she said, I'm too tired to find a place. And he said, we have room in our place. The place had just told me they didn't have room. We have room in our place. He said, we'll make room. And he picked up her pack and carried her in. When we are not fully present, when we don't listen, we miss the opportunity to serve. We miss the opportunity to love, to care. We miss the opportunity to be the hands and feet of God in unique ways. Learn to be present. Learn to listen. Learn to notice. Very next morning, I was leaving the same town. And it was hot because it was hot. We were up early. That was the only way to deal with the heat, was start early. So we got up early, like 4:30. Did you know there's a 4:30 in the morning? We got up at 4:30, still dark out, and began to make our way out of town. And it was fairly lonely in the sense that I could see one friend ahead of me. And we're out in the country on dirt roads. And as we're walking, all of a sudden I noticed, I think he's on the wrong road. So I pull up the app. There's a Camino Ninja app that tells you, like, you can see a map, and I'm like, I'm on the road. He's not on the road. Now, sometimes there are alternatives. I'm like, that's not an alternative. I pull out the book. He's not on an alternative road. I think he's going the wrong way. So I did what I could do. I went, Poland. He stopped. I said, this way. He came back. He met me there, and he went, man, in the dark, I missed the arrow. I said, when we pay attention, when we listen, when we're present, maybe God uses us to help someone find the way. This way. Because sometimes even with good intentions, you miss the way. Sometimes even with good intentions, you get lost. And you just need someone to say, West Virginia. This way. Jane Blanchard writes these words about walking the Camino. She says, use the guides and the maps to lead you to Santiago, but use the lessons learned on the Camino to find your way. We say in our Cathedral covenant prayer, we're all on the journey of discipleship. We're all seeking to be faithful followers of Jesus. We're all on the journey. Well, here are the action steps. And I just hope you'll let these sink in. What does it mean for you to learn to be present? What does it mean for you to learn to listen? What does it mean for you to learn to notice? And maybe two ways to think about this. What do you need to remove from your life to listen, to be present, to notice? What do you need to add into your life to listen, to be present, and to notice? Two things I would give you to think about. For me, news was one of those things I need to limit. I'll always be a little bit of a news junkie. I want to know what's happening in the world. But I don't need as much as I was giving myself. It does not make me a better person. And I need to add beauty. Where are you adding beauty in your life? Music, art, literature, creation, relationship. Where are you adding beauty? Pray with me. This is a prayer from the Camino from one of the churches we visited. Lord, you took your servants Abraham and Sarah out of their homeland, protected them on their pilgrimage. You who guided us through the desert. We ask you to watch over us, your children. We who make a daily pilgrimage on the way. God, be for us a companion on our journey, our guide in the crossroads, our strength and fatigue, our shelter on the way. God, be for us relief in the heat, our light in the storm. Comfort us in discouragement and strengthen us in our intentions. May we all arrive safe at the end of our pilgrimage, strengthened, changed, empowered to love as we return home. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.